You're welcome to the Gavel. I'm Linda Akibi. The National Assembly passed the Petroleum Industry Bill, PIB, before lawmakers went on their long summer recess. There was major drama in the Senate and House of Representatives when both chambers passed the bill over a clause in the trust fund approved for host communities in the bill. The fund is a yearly operational cost of oil companies, which is to be paid to a dedicated account to be used for the development of the communities and also to protect the pipelines. However, some lawmakers from the Niger Delta and interest groups are aggrieved that the percentage for the host communities was whittled from 5 to 3%. We'll explore this issue in this report, plus we'll also look at other critical aspects of the PIB. The Senate and House of Representatives have passed the Petroleum Industry Bill, PIB, breaking the jinx as previous assemblies failed to pass the bill for more than a decade.
Those against any, the ayes have it.
The passage of the PIB was not without controversy in both houses, as the major contention is a 3% trust fund approved for host communities in the bill. The 3% yearly operational cost of oil companies is to be paid in a dedicated account called the Host Communities Development Trust Fund, which will be used for the development of the communities and also protect the pipelines. But lawmakers, mostly from the South and some Niger Delta activists, politicians and interest groups, have criticized the reduction of the percentage from 5% originally proposed to 3%.
I thought that the host communities and the people should have been placed as the #1 partners for stability and for development of the oil producing areas in order to guarantee sustainability in this critical industry, without which the national economy will collapse. So this is why I disagree with the strategic management. So direct your question to the Petroleum Minister and the GMD, especially the Petroleum Minister. He will answer why President Yaradua proposed this, 10%. President Buhari proposed earlier 5%, and why he from Bayelsa came to the National Assembly to propose 2.5%.
What I'm asking for is not for me as a person, but it's for the interest of this nation. Because when we pass a good law, we must also have a good environment to implement the law. If the environment is not conducive for the implementation, we will all come back to also regret. That is my thinking. So can I appeal to you, sir?
Put the question on 4.
That you increase the number a little bit and put the question again. Let's have a compromise, sir.
While the furor over the percentage for the Host Communities Fund lingers, it is important to highlight some of the critical aspects of the bill passed. The PIB will see to the establishment of several new agencies, one of which is the Nigeria Upstream Regulatory Commission. This commission shall have the power to acquire, hold and dispose of property and be responsible for the technical and commercial regulation of upstream petroleum operations. A commission for frontier basins is also to be established and tasked with promoting the exploration of the frontier basins of Nigeria, develop exploration strategies and portfolio management for the exploration of unassigned frontier basins in the country, identify opportunities and increase information about the petroleum resource base within frontier basins in Nigeria. The PIB also proposes the creation of the Frontier Exploration Fund, which shall be 10% of rents on petroleum prospecting licenses and 10% rent on petroleum mining leases, as well as 30% of NNPC's limited oil and gas profits, as in production sharing, profit sharing, and risk service contracts. The fund shall be applied to all basins and undertaken simultaneously. The PIB proposes that the Minister of Petroleum shall, within 6 months from the commencement of this act, cause to be incorporated a limited liability company, which shall be called Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPC Limited. On the issue of gas flaring, a licensee or operator that flares or vents natural gas, except in the case of an emergency or an exemption granted by the Commission, or as an acceptable safety practice under established regulations, commits an offence under this Act and shall be liable to a fine as prescribed by the Commission. A fine due under this section shall be paid in the same manner and be subject to the same procedure for the payment of royalties to the government by companies engaged in the production of petroleum. Monies received from gas flaring penalties by the Commission shall be transferred to the Midstream Gas Infrastructure Fund for investment in midstream gas infrastructure within the host communities of the sector on which the penalties are levied. Still on the Petroleum Industry Bill, we had the chats with a policy analyst, Faiz Muhammad Ali, to further examine some of the important and maybe overlooked aspects of the Petroleum Industry Bill.
Crude oil dominates Nigeria's economy. Some 90% of government revenues come from the oil industry. To give you an idea of the scope, we're talking about some 37 billion barrels of oil still left in onshore and offshore fields, about 180, maybe 190 million cubic meters of natural gas. So it's the largest in Africa, and that also means that we've had a wellspring of wealth for several decades. Unfortunately, it has also been, to put it very lightly, monstrously difficult to govern over the past several decades. And the PIB bill is something that has actually been in the offing since the Obasanjo administration. The very first term, I think sometime in 2001, was when there was an attempt to reform the oil sector in the form of an all-encompassing bill. Now, unfortunately, I would argue because of the size and scope and complexity of the issue, they failed several times over. Recently, of course, this September, President Buhari was able to muster enough political will, let's say, to get a bill into the National Assembly. And I think he needs to be commended for getting it that far.
In the PIB that was passed, which aspects would you say excites you the most, which you feel that would really, improve Nigeria's oil and gas sector?
I think the most exciting prospect is probably the idea of turning the NNPC itself into a publicly listed company that is profit-driven and open to external audit. The NNPC, unfortunately, has had very opaque accounting standards, and its operations are not very well understood either by domestic or international partners. That's been something that has prevented the development of the sector for a very long time. What the bill is currently proposing is that they open the NNPC to external audit and make it a publicly listed company, which would mean that there would be a date set aside where shares would be sold. Now, I think this is very progressive, especially because when you consider certain sections of the NNPC itself, when you consider the refinery we have in Kaduna, for example, it's been in existence for some 20 years or so now, yet I don't think there has been a year in which it has actually posted profit. Now, remember, we have oil selling at $74 a barrel right now. There was a point not very long ago where we were selling oil at over $100 a barrel. How is it that we could have a refinery within this country, I think the 9th or the 8th largest oil producer in the world currently, have a refinery that even at a time of high prices was not producing any profits? If you were a publicly listed company, they would cut off that refinery immediately, or reform it, or sell it off. And that's something that has been argued. That's something that several people have argued is very important, something that they should be looking into, but hasn't been looked into for a long time. Making the NNPC a publicly listed company is going to force them to do that. I think that's a win for everybody involved.
What aspects of the PIV do you have a problem with, you're not very comfortable about?
So the one that causes me the most worry is the proposal to bifurcate the Department of Petroleum Resources into two separate agencies, one that handles the upstream sector and one the downstream sector. Now, the DPR has been in existence for some 51 years, and they have been, if not the sole, and at least the primary regulatory agency for the oil sector. Now, there is such a thing as institutional memory, and that means that an organization that has been around long enough has the wherewithal to withstand shocks to the system. It has the knowledge base and the consolidation of data to get through new information. Now, if you're a new organization, you don't really have that. at a time when we have much leaner budgets, I'm not sure it makes sense to make more difficult the coordination of the largest regulatory body in the oil sector, especially considering how critical the oil sector is to our national wealth. It would seem to me that the administration, or I shouldn't say the administration, I would say the National Assembly hasn't taken into consideration the findings of the Stephen Orensai report. Sometime in 2011, a report was sent to the desk of President Jonathan where it was intimated that rather than create new agencies which actually contributed to a sort of stagnation in the way that we function in the public institutions, we should be finding ways in which we could reduce the cost of governance. And that would mean out of the 263 government agencies we had at the time, that's including parastatals and ministries, the recommendation was that they should be reduced to somewhere around 160 or 161, I can't remember. So it makes very little sense to me, especially considering that new agencies and new ministries and new parastatals have sprung up since 2011. It makes very little sense to me to create even more bureaucracy, which means even more administrative costs, at a time when we should be using those administrative costs to invest in renewable energy, which is what a lot of progressive nations are doing, and Nigeria shouldn't be left behind.
Now, what would you see? The PIB has been passed. We're hoping that the president will assent to it as quickly as possible. What would you want to see after this bill is assented to and becomes the law in the country?
Well, I'm hoping that it's not passed, actually.
You're hoping it's not passed?
I'm hoping that it's not, and I don't think the president is going to sign it personally. From my perspective, the president is an old school thinker. And if you cannot explain to him why you need to create a new paradigm in place of the old paradigm and make it easier, make it cheaper, then he's not going to really see the point in it. That's my perspective. Of course, there are going to be lobbyists from both sides in his ear telling him what they think is the right thing to do, but I'm not sure he's going to sign it. I think a mistake that is currently being made is the thought that once this bill is passed, what you're going to see is a new way of doing business within the sector. Unfortunately, what people aren't taking into consideration is the simple fact that all we're doing is separating a well-coordinated agency into two. You're not changing stuff. The same people who have been running these organizations for the past couple of years are the same people who are going to be running it after. The bill does not speak to a complete change in the governance of the system.
When you say we need a change, what sort of changes to deal with transparency? What kind of changes are you looking to see?
The main change that I'm looking for is, has already been suggested within the bill, which is to turn the NNPC into a publicly listed company. I think that's a very good move. I also think that what we need to do more than anything is institute a culture and avenues to ensure transparency within the sector. A lot of the deals that are currently in place are opaque. A lot of the accounting that takes place within the NNPC is behind closed doors. There is nowhere that you can go to find the data about the NNPC's accounting for the last 20 years. So we don't even know if they've been making a profit. It's just something that is announced at the end of the year. Whether or not they're making a profit, how much that percentage has changed over the past decades, we don't know. So for me, more than anything, I don't think the bill does enough to ensure that there is a watchdog or several watchdogs or several auditors created or empowered, the ones that are already existing, empowered within the industry to ensure that things move more efficiently over the long term.
You're welcome back to the Gavel. The Senate is retreating from further hearing the assault case brought by a petitioner, Mr. Clement Sagwat, against the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, Mr. Danladi Umar. The upper chamber directed its Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petition to investigate the case. Now, a video surfaced online in March this year showing the CCT chairman allegedly assaulting a security guard at the Banex Plaza in Abuja. The chairman of the Ethics and Privileges Committee told journalists during the week that Mr. Umar has gotten an originating summon from the court challenging the jurisdiction of the Senate and its committee to continue the case of assault brought before it, and is therefore standing down the investigation for now.
Lawyer to the plaintiff.
For the past 3 months, the Senate Committee on Ethics has attempted to investigate assault allegations against the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, Mr. Danladi Umar. A video surfaced online in March showing the CCT chairman allegedly assaulting a security guard at the Banex Plaza in Abuja. The victim, Mr. Clement Sagwat, petitioned the Senate asking the upper chamber to investigate the alleged assault by the CCT chairman. But the investigation by the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions has consistently hit brick walls. First, the CCT chairman, at his earliest appearance before the committee, begged for time to study the petition.
I can be most obliged if I can be given, even if it is a week from now. I have selected cases. In fact, right now there are about 24 cases waiting for me pending at the tribunal. They are waiting. And I know that I do have cases within this week as well. So I will graciously request I'll be most obliged if you can give me a week or so to be able to respond to this.
Mr. Umar declined to show up at the next invitation, citing illness. And at a subsequent hearing, his attorney told the committee that Mr. Umar filed a suit at the Federal High Court in Abuja on July 13th to challenge the constitutional powers of the Senate to conduct an investigative hearing on the assault case.
The papers you brought, that summon has no effect on hearing this case before Nigerians. Because it's an afterthought, an attempt to ambush justice.
However, at the resumption of the hearing on Tuesday, the committee is taking a new stand on the case, but it's a position which the lawyer to the petitioner disagrees with.
The media, the press of the Senate, will make this one known to the whole Nigeria, that Danladi Umar wants to circumvent the law by what? Usurping the powers of the Senate, the legislative arm of government, to become that of the judiciary. Once a case is before the National Assembly by ordinary Nigeria, there's no way you can now go to court. The respondent will now go to court to go and sue. I'm asking for prayers. So this is the position before Nigerians. On this note, the committee hereby ruled that we will set aside this particular case, sine die, pending the determination of the case in court that Senate has a right to hear this case.
The present document before this committee is not an order of any court to stop this committee or to stop the Senate from going ahead with the hearing of this matter. It is a mere process, a mere court process served on the Senate. Now, the only thing that can stop the Senate of this country from going on with this hearing is an order, a valid order of a court of competent jurisdiction.
Members of the committee are not the only ones waiting to see the outcome of the case in court. The alleged victim, his legal team and the public observing the case to see the conclusion. A federal lawmaker speaks to us on the worrying take 2. Voice only 54321, voice only links 4. A federal lawmaker speaks to us on the worrying rise in the cost of food items as well as insecurity in the country.
Well, it's very obvious. The farmers are the major producers of food items, not the food items imported for the children, but they are the producers. the planting season, there's always a scarcity of food because most of what we plant is what we reap, maybe around September, October. But the farmers could not even go to farm. About 25% of them are working now, while the 75% have been sacked by insurgents in the north, insurgents in the northwest, Boko Haram and others in the northeast, where we have serious food basket. In the middle belt, that's the central area, where you have Benue and Nasarawa that are food basket. The insurgents are there, the cattle S-men are there, dealing with them. Where we have potato and everything in Plateau, you have the same Fulani S-men dealing with them. In the south, we still have the cattle battling with the farmers. Automatically, the capacity of farmers to produce has reduced. Then the little they have, the little rice and so on, and generally the southwest or the south, they are now being worried about beans coming from the northeast because the farmers there are producing under the control of Boko Haram, and they pay royalty to them. Go and verify. So if they want to die, they will be eating it. If they don't want to die, they are scared because it's coming from that side. That's why you see beans going up. Then you have rice. You have Dikwa rice. It's no more because that place is occupied. There's another area where they are producing rice. We are having problem. It's only the ones we produce in South here, in Kebbi, and so on. So the little augmentation they are doing, the little smuggling of rice they are having into the system and other food items are being impounded by custom in various markets.
Now, the Senate, before it went on recess, has talked a lot about insecurity in the country. We saw different lawmakers raise up concerns about kidnappings and violence in their communities. How do we address these problems?
Well, the issue of insecurity has been politicized. When the South is crying that their farms are being damaged by cows through the Fulani S-men, and they propose that they will ban open grazing. The North said Fulani S-men belong to them, they can graze anywhere. In Kaduna offers a lot of guarantees for kidnappers than anywhere. They have been killing people. See the one they carried about students in one secondary school. The parents paid, after losing about 4 students, the parents paid 150 million. They still have some few. The last one, another secondary school on the road, they have paid 100 million now. And they are still remaining. They are releasing them one by one. When they are about to die, they remove and collect money. Within that metropolitan, Kaduna has been a metropolitan long time ago. Then who is behind this? And apart from 1122 they have been carrying, including 2 emirs. They took emirs away and returned the emir and carried the family away. And there are police. Then the question, who is deceiving who? Who is behind it? The federal government is keeping quiet about Kaduna issues. The southern Kaduna is being ravaged. Their own is not kidnapping, it's killing.
Now, this is where we draw the curtains on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us and see you again next week.